Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast, the podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman. And because this week's episode is coming out on December 24th, I thought I'd give you 24 tips for a joyful sugar-free December, but also a joyful sugar-free life. We'll get to the 24 tips in just a minute. But first, I just wanted to tell you that if you're looking for some free resources about how to get rid of cravings, then I have plenty for you. First, download my 5 tips to get rid of cravings. And those 5 tips may not be what you think they are. So go to aftersugarclub.com and download your 5 tips today. And come check out the Life After Sugar Facebook page and subscribe to the Life After Sugar YouTube channel, as well as my Instagram account at MyLifeAfterSugar, which is where you'll get all kinds of inspiration so that you can see that it's perfectly possible to live a happy and active life even if you don't eat sugar. You can also check out my TikTok account at Netta_LifeAfterSugar. All right, so here are 24 tips to help you reduce sugar, and not just reduce sugar, but to live more joyfully with less sugar in your life. And I give all of these tips as a downloadable document inside of the After Sugar Club, but today I'm giving them to you here on this podcast. Tip number 1 is to stick to real whole foods rather than industrially engineered and concocted, highly processed food products. And you can actually use, for example, fruits and vegetables to make cute themed platters like a Christmas tree made out of broccoli with decorations made out of cherry tomatoes or bell peppers with a homemade dip. I make my homemade dip by mixing full-fat sour cream, plain yogurt, and herbs and spices. Simple. You could also make a fruit platter and arrange the pieces of fruit in any creative way you want. It's a great idea when you're wondering what to bring along as a dessert, or when you have company over, or just for yourself. Tip number 2, read a good book. Here are a few of my favorite books about how to reduce sugar, about intermittent fasting, and about gut health. The first one is a classic. It's called The Obesity Code by Dr. Jason Fung. I also recommend Hooked by Michael Moss. Also, The Case Against Sugar by Gary Taubes. And The Clever Gut Diet by Dr. Michael Mosley. And about intermittent fasting, Delay, Don't Deny by Jen Stevens, or any of her books like Fast, Feast, Repeat, Feast Without Fear, and her latest book, Cleanish. Another book that changed my outlook on food is called The Dorito Effect by Mark Schatzker. And more about intermittent fasting, AC, The Power of Appetite Correction by Dr. Bert Herring. I also recommend reading the book Metabolical by Dr. Robert Lustig. And of course, you'll be reading my book, right? When it comes out, hopefully, in 2024. Tip number 3, put up some seasonal decorations. Whatever the holiday or the festival or the season. It's always fun to make a special effort and decorate your home. Tip number 4, hug someone you love, including yourself. And in the After Sugar Club and my program Freedom from Cravings Formula, I teach lots of ways for showing yourself more love and compassion. Tip number 5, choose to eat your 5-star foods. What are 5-star foods? Well, these are whole foods that you find delicious, that nourish you and fill you up, that help you prep easy meals, and especially that are not created by the processed foods industry. Tip number 6, celebrate the small wins. Sometimes it feels like it's an uphill struggle and a huge mountain to climb when you're trying to reduce sugar. But every day has its small wins, and I think it's important to be able to recognize that every small reduction in added sugars is a win. So, what small win did you have today? Tip number 7, add fermented foods and drinks to your daily diet. Making your own probiotic foods and drinks is so much cheaper than buying them store-bought, and you can control the quality of the ingredients as well as the fermentation process. And it's much easier and simpler than you think to make your own kombucha, yogurt, kefir, and fermented veggies like sauerkraut and kimchi. And it's especially a whole lot easier when you have someone teaching you who's been making these fermented foods and drinks for over 8 years. That's me, by the way. And here's a little pop quiz for you. Kombucha is made with sugar, but what happens to the sugar during the fermentation process? I'll tell you right after this short break. I just want to take a quick break to say that if this is your first time here, then welcome and thank you for listening to this podcast. And whether you're new or a regular and you haven't yet rated or reviewed this podcast, could I ask you to scroll down and tap on the stars to rate this podcast and also to write a short review to let me know how this podcast is helping you in your life after sugar. It doesn't need to be a super long review. For example, here's one from Mac's mum from the US who says, "Excellent podcast, 5 stars. Thank you so much for giving information about life after sugar. Not so easy. However, with your strategies and your informative guests, it makes the impossible seem absolutely possible with a better quality of life. Your podcast has been a godsend, and I thank you again so much for it." Aw, thank you. Thank you for listening. And when you rate and review this podcast, not only does it encourage me to continue making new episodes, but it also helps to share this podcast and have more people see it so that we can help more people feel better and lose weight with less sugar. So again, thank you for rating and reviewing this podcast and for spreading the word about sugar. All right, so just before the break, I asked, what happens to the sugar during the fermentation process to make kombucha? Well, first of all, you need to know that without sugar, kombucha can't ferment, because sucrose, which is the technical name for sugar, is what the good bacteria find easiest to digest or to eat up. And during the fermentation process, the good bacteria consume the sugar and create carbon dioxide, which is what gives the bubbles in kombucha. They also create a little bit of ethanol, which is a type of alcohol. So sugar is absolutely necessary to make kombucha, but we as humans don't eat the sugar. The good bacteria eat the sugar. And the longer the kombucha ferments, the less residual sugar there is. I leave mine to ferment for over 4 weeks, and it's pretty vinegary at the end of it. But that suits me fine because I don't like sweet tastes anymore, including in my kombucha. Tip number 8, try intermittent fasting. It's a fantastic tool to keep your body healthy, and intermittent fasting is way easier when you're not snacking on sweet and starchy foods all the time. You can choose a 12-hour window to begin. In fact, during the night when you're sleeping, you're fasting. So really getting to 12 hours of fasting is pretty easy when you're sleeping through like 8 of those hours. It doesn't need to be a long extended fast. 12 to 16 hours has been shown to have fantastic benefits. Tip number 9, make some handmade gifts rather than buying them from a store. Are you crafty? Artistic? Do you cook? What handmade gifts could you make this year? Tip number 10, if you have a pet, spend some special time with your pet. Or offer to look after one, or to walk a friend or neighbour's pet. It's great therapy and 100% sugar-free. Tip number 11, try a new recipe. Extra kudos if it's based on real whole foods, which automatically excludes sugar. Tip number 12, practice the art of gratitude. What are you grateful for today? Tip number 13, look after yourself. You're worth it. What enjoyable self-care activity can you do today? One of my favourite self-care activities is going snowshoeing. Because you know I live in Canada, right? And speaking of snow, tip number 14, if there's snow where you are, go play in the snow. And if not, go have fun outside anyway. Tip number 15, put on your favourite music. It can be seasonal music or any other type. Tip number 16, get together with people who appreciate you and get you. Community and fellowship can lift you up, just like in the After Sugar Club. Tip number 17, take a moment to remember a special person who's no longer here. Who is that for you? Tip number 18, call someone you've lost touch with and reconnect with them. Tip number 19, try a new fruit or vegetable, one you've never tried before. Tip number 20, get an extra hour of good quality sleep. Just 1 extra hour can make all the difference. Tip number 21, go for a nice long walk or a jog or a bike ride. Alone or with a friend, it's great for our mental health to get out and move. Tip number 22, have a candlelit meal, whatever time of day it is. Candles always make a meal special. Tip number 23, look through your wardrobe and give away any items that don't fit you anymore. Someone's sure to appreciate them, and if you've started cutting sugar, then you may find that some of your clothes are already too loose. And tip number 24, treat yourself like a star. And that includes taking care of your health by reducing sugar. And my last and final tip is to treat yourself like a star by getting to freedom from cravings. We can work together in 2 ways. First, in the After Sugar Club, which is designed to give you support and accountability through our live check-in calls at a more affordable price. The After Sugar Club is always open for you. Join us today. Check out the After Sugar Club private membership. When you go to aftersugarclub.com, click on After Sugar Club in the top menu. And for more step-by-step guidance and customized support to help you get rid of cravings so that you can slim down and finally feel in control around food, there's my 90-day program, Freedom from Cravings Formula, which opens a few times a year. To get more info about the program and when it next opens, go to aftersugarclub.com and click on the big green button to schedule a clarity call with me so that we can talk together to see if the Freedom from Cravings Formula program is a good fit for you. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.